Welcome to the modernization of DoD Endpoint Security Strategy and Evolution of Continuous Monitoring and Risk Scoring Theater session at TechNet Cyber. I am Josh Rinke, Program Manager with Mantech, and we're a proud supporting partner of TechNet Cyber. I am pleased to introduce our next session on behalf of AFCEA International. Brian Hennigan is the Division Chief of ID3 for DISA. He served in the Connecticut Army National Guard and deployed to Operation Enduring Freedom. After supporting roles with the Asymmetric Warfare Group and then JFHQ Doden, Mr. Hennigan took a civilian role at JFHQ Doden running this Joint Force Headquarters Operations Center. Later, he moved to DISA ID3 as an Operations and Mission Support Branch Chief before becoming the ID3 Division Chief. This time, I'll turn over this great session to Brian Hennigan, who will introduce the additional speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Privilege and an honor. My name is Brian Hennigan. Great introduction. Thank you. To my left is my technical director, J.C. Wilson. I'll give him a second to introduce himself. J.C.
Good morning. Sounds like this is working. J.C. Wilson. I've been at DISA for 18 years now. I've briefed at several of these, and I always say it's great to be here. This is the first time that literally means something. Like, it's really great to still be here. So appreciate you guys coming. I see a lot of familiar faces. It's like a family reunion. So for those people that I know, just clap no matter what we say. There you go.
Yeah, they get it.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, I'll turn it back over to Brian so we can get started.
Okay. Today we're talking about the endpoint security strategy, the upgrade to that, and then the modernization of CMRS and how that plays into that strategy. Right. So throughout this entire conference, for those that are vendors that have been here, you probably heard a lot of talk about the 4 pillars: lethality, readiness, modernization, and anyone know the last one? What's the last one? Anyone? No? Campaigning. There we go. Right, so that's what we're doing today. We're going to talk about how those 4 pillars in CMRS and the endpoint security strategy actually fit into that strategy, that system. Right, so some of the other things we're going to talk about is why do we have to modernize? Right, what's the reason for it? Why do we have to increase our capabilities? What's the driving force behind it? Where are we trying to go to? And then what programs do we have in that endpoint security strategy? Particularly today, we're going to talk about CMRS, the Continuous Monitoring Risk Scoring Program, and how that actually fits into those 4 key pillars, and then the bigger strategy of zero trust adoption across the DoD. So talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the key challenges as well. I'm going to turn some of this over to JC to kind of talk about what CMRS is and how that system works.
All right, is anybody controlling the slides? Or?
Yeah, we do have. Right here, sir.
All right, yeah, I probably should got here early. All right, so this is the agenda. We may go off script, but I mean, we're going to make this fun, so you guys will go away and learn something. So the endpoint security landscape is changing. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to what's going on in the streets, but DISA was primarily a centralized shop for quite a while. Since before I started in 2007, we were purchasing enterprise solutions for DoD as a whole to drive down costs, be on the same page. Everybody understood the data that was coming in, and things are now starting to shift where we are decentralizing. And the writing's been on the wall for several years. We used to have an enterprise Trellix contracts. That is going away. We used to have Tanium. We used to have, there's another, the Force Scout contract. So everything's getting pushed out to the individual customers. So we still need that data to get to what we will talk about later on, which is CMRS, so we can still meet the vulnerability, the compliance missions, the cyber scorecard efforts, and the way to do that is to make sure that we have something that can integrate with the different cocktail of solutions out there that can also work with our Microsoft E5 suite licenses that the DoD is using. So that is our focus moving forward for this year and beyond. So as we move forward, we're looking at providing a roadmap and an understanding, and we'll go to the next slide unless, Brian, you had something to say.
Nope.
For those folks who aren't familiar with the MDR, the Master Data Endpoint Record, this is essentially our Bible. This is what you guys need to speak to. So we've defined all the elements that we care about and we're telling DoD, our government and industry partners, you can use whatever you want to use. We were paying for things, and that gave you some flexibility to use some cool stuff. But now, go out and do you. We've defined these attributes. As long as your product of choice answers the mail, we're going to move to a solution that can take the information that you provide us and publish us to still meet that mission.
Yeah. So you're probably familiar with the concept of defense in depth, right? The DoD is real big on that. They've used it for a really long time. And the idea there is you have different layers of security, or physical security is one of them. Cybersecurity, you have different layers. So your perimeter, your network, your user, your endpoint devices, right? And everything is segregated. The problem we ran into is that's a lot of information. And the DoD has a problem, right? The problem isn't a people problem. There's lots of people that want to work for us. The problem isn't a sensor problem. We've got lots of sensors pulling that information. The problem really is a data problem. At the end of the day, you probably heard it a couple times here throughout this week, that the DoD has a lot of data, and we don't know what to do with it, and we don't know how to use it because all of it has been siloed in different programs, and they're not interoperable. So if you caught the CIO speech yesterday, awesome speech by Ms. Arrington, but she's right, the information is siloed, and it needs to not be. So that defense in depth strategy, we're starting to shift away from that and go into a hybrid strategy where we take the sensors that we have and we say, we want you to play in that sandbox with each other. We want you to give all that information to one location so we can streamline it, deduplicate it, and make sense out of the information that's out there. So really what we've done is we created a hybrid strategy as we adopt zero trust, right? So we've gone from a defense in depth to a data-centric kind of adoption for that information. Still have your layers, still have your segmentations where you need it, but take the data from all those sensors, put them together, and then make a better picture of what it is that's happening on your network. How is this information being used by the adversary, right? If the adversary is coming in, how are they getting in and where are they pivoting to? No one comes in and is like, oh, I broke through the perimeter, I won, right? No, they come in for a reason. They're looking for something. They're trying to get somewhere. Right, so follow them. Try to create the conditions for success for your offensive cyber guys and your defensive cyber guys through these different tools and the data sets. Identify in real time when someone is coming in and what they're doing. Right, so that's kind of where we're going with CMRS. Right, so what is CMRS? So CMRS is a browser-based dashboard or set of dashboards that allows visibility into the network. Right, what systems are on it, what software is it running, what version of firmware is on there, what are the controls, what are the certificates, all that stuff. If I was to really identify what CMRS is in terms that people can understand, it's a road atlas. Now, for some of you younger guys and girls that are out there, a road atlas is a book you keep in your car when you get lost, when you don't have GPS anymore. And right, so I have one in my car. My kids think it's fun to look at. But what it tells you is all the major highways, and then where all your cities are, where all the different things are in your infrastructure. And if you get really good ones, it'll tell you where all the monuments are, and some of it will be topography, so you can know when you're going uphill, downhill, all that fun stuff. Right? If what we're trying to do is take that road atlas and modernize it to an actual GPS. I want Siri. If I'm a commander, right, my first priority when I come into a new environment is understanding my landscape, my terrain, right, the battle space. And we are, per Ms. Arrington, she was right. We are at war. And when you're in war, when you're taking over a new location, the first thing you do is understand your terrain. Where are your critical vulnerabilities? Where's your critical terrain at? Where are the things you need to protect? And why do you need to protect them? Right? If you're a new commander on the ground, you may not know that you need to protect that tower on the west side because that's the one that gets hit all the time because that's the one that's got the best visibility with the moonlight. Right? So those are things that you got to think about. And it's the same thing for the cyber defensive operator. As the commander comes in, he needs to understand what are my key terrain? What's on my network? What do I have to defend? And what things are vulnerable? What things are not vulnerable? What things are good? And where do I kind of pivot my resources to be able to take advantage of that and provide the right amount of time and effort into the things that need to be upgraded and changed? So that's kind of what CMRS does from a high-level view, right? So we're looking at the different assets, we're looking at the different software packages, and we're trying to make better informed risk decisions for the DoD, right? And the same thing with property managers. They need to understand where their stuff is. They need to understand who owns their stuff. And that's kind of where we're going with CMRS.
Right. So modernization is the name of the game, and as you can see on the bottom, while CMRS has been around for a long time, it's not as flexible as we would like it to be. So we're able to communicate with all of you folks, the vendors in the audience. We can set up APIs, but it takes a while for us to do the development on our side. And with the cocktail of solutions that everybody's using across DoD, it's untenable to get to each and every one of you guys and develop something when it takes a 2 to 4 month development cycle, test cycle, deployment cycle for us to absorb all that information. So we do have integrations with MDE, Tycon, Forescout, Tanium, C2C, and Tenable. And then we're bringing in the, like I said, we're bringing in the MDE information as part of that Microsoft suite. But everybody's using something different. So we've got to get to that point where we're getting the data that the operators need and that and displaying that common operating picture so we can make some good decisions.
All right, so what you see here is kind of the operational overview of CMRS. There's a lot of words on slides. We can pass the slides out to anyone who wants them after. Theoretically, the concept here is, like JC said, we're trying to make interoperability a thing. We want to bring all the information from all the sensors to coalesce into an actual picture that commanders can use to inform risk. So how does the modernization affect our core priorities, right? So how does CMRS fit into this picture, and how does it do these things, right? So how do you enable lethality? Right, that's a big deal across. You hear that a lot today or throughout the session is lethality and readiness. Readiness is probably the biggest one that CMRS hits at the very beginning when you think about it. Right? This is the readiness of your network. How do you make sure that your network is ready for the fight? That's where CMRS comes in. You can see your assets, you can see what they're doing, where they're located, how they're configured, what versions of software are on there. So if you know what the vulnerabilities are, or you know what your adversary is going after, then you can make sure your network and your systems on it, and your key terrain, specifically your key terrain, is protected based on those known vulnerabilities and those known APTs that target you. Right? So that's first is readiness. After your readiness, then you start setting the conditions for engagement. Right? And then this is kind of a weird concept for DCO, right? Conditions for engagement. You might have heard it a little bit on the first day. And the concept is, how do you create conditions that impose cost on your adversary? Well, the CMRS is a good place for the start. You can start setting up those networks to say, I get hit in this network all the time. What's in this network? You can understand what the targets are, and then you can start creating duplication. Right? Let's make another network that looks just like it. Let's start funneling people into that network. And if they're not supposed to be there, they'll realize it pretty quick. But if they're adversaries and they want to play in that box, well, here you go. Here's a honeypot for you. Enjoy that. Right? So those are some of the things that you think about when you start, how do I impose cost on the adversary? Where do I put complexity in place to kind of drive them crazy? Make it take more time for them, because time is money, especially in cyber. Right? I think I was at the NVIDIA GTC event earlier this year. I don't know if anyone else from this audience had attended, but one of the conversations with Simmons was when a electrical plant is hit, it costs roughly $500,000 per hour in cost to that company, right, per hour. And when you think about the average cyber attack or ransomware or anything, you could be talking days, weeks. And that $500,000 an hour, that skyrockets your costs. So how do you get ahead of that? And that's kind of where you got to know your terrain. If I know my terrain is vulnerable, I know where to put my resources so that I don't have a $5 million wallet hit to my profits. Or in the case of the DoD, I don't have to spend resources I don't have. My resources are finite. I don't have a lot of people that I can send a CPT to. I can't necessarily take a CPT from one location and send to another location in the blink of an eye. Right? And if I'm a commander, I have other priorities, but this over here is causing me pain. That means that I have to redirect my resources and my priorities to something else that may not actually be a big deal. But because they're in there, now I have to do something about it. Right? So how do you try to identify that terrain before it happens? And that's where CMRS comes into play there, for making sure that the network and the systems are ready for the fight. Right?
Yeah, I think the takeaway from this slide is the CMRS mission is expanding. Originally back in the early 2010s, this was the vulnerability management system. And the vulnerability management system was compliance, IAVMs, operation orders, and a way to push your retina scans in to assess your ANA packages. And then we broke that all up into separate programs, and everything was supposed to be this enjoyable ecosystem to kind of mimic what the Department of State was doing in the early 2010s, which was iPost, where everybody had a grade on their posture of their environment, and they were using it as like a shaming function. Well, this guy's got a C because he hasn't patched this, and this, but this guy has an A, and I don't want to look bad in front of this guy. So that's kind of where the CMRS came to the forefront. But as the years have gone by, the mission has expanded and increased. And kind of what Brian was saying is we've got to support these things, which is why we're looking to modernize.
Yep. Yeah, so that's really why it needs to evolve, right? The fight has changed. The adversary has changed. They're faster. They're stronger. There's more of them. And pretty much now with the introduction of AI, it's very scary because pretty much anyone can become a cyber operator, right? We can have an adversary that we never even thought of was an adversary. Now they've upskilled because now they have the power of an AI behind them that's allowed them to do things faster. Right, so you can get into a network, you can tell an AI, you can give it Metasploit, and I don't know how many have seen this, right? You can take Metasploit, which is an open source tool, and you can tell the AI, hey, use this tool set and try to crack into this network that I own. And the AI is like, oh, okay. I didn't work. Do it again. Okay. And then again and again. And keep doing it until you get there. So in about 5 minutes, this thing has gone through about 5,000 different options that it can run. And sometimes even more depending on the kind of power and compute you have. And that's just the 5,000 in 5 minutes. That's running an 8 of 5,000, which is on a laptop. Now imagine when you get to some of these bigger boys, right? These national state actors that have DGXs. They have the equivalent of a DGX if you're Chinese, right? Because you don't have the DGX because of sanctions, sure, right? But imagine that you have an adversary who really has a need and a want to get into a network, and they have the resources behind them to do it and to drive that power. And it's not one guy, it's 5,000 guys and girls, right? So now you really have a much larger attack surface than you even thought. You may have one system that's weak, but that one system is getting hit by 5 million people a day. And how do you take all that traffic and then make sense out of it, right? So that's really where understanding your landscape is really important. So that's kind of why we have to evolve CMRS. That's the answer right there.
Okay, so yeah, this fun ink blot chart over here. So this is where we are currently. So as we modernize, this is essentially the first phase. As we migrated off of Trellix, we still needed a way for the folks in the DoD to still push that data to CMRS. Additionally, as we started to onboard into MDE, we needed a solution to collect all the data, which is our CEDAR solution. You guys can see that little green database in the middle. It's the Secure Endpoint Data Repository, which is collecting all the data from the different MDE instances within the DoD. And we're turning that on slowly, and that information is getting pushed into legacy CMRS. We're still supporting Tenable and the different solutions mentioned on the previous slide, but as we move forward into the next stage of modernization, we need a different solution, and we'll look at that on the next slide, to collect different sets of data from the other products that are out there.
If I could, I want to talk about this for a second. Is anyone familiar with Microsoft? Anyone heard of it? Small startup, yeah, right? Right. So the DoD adopted the E5 licensing, right? That's not a surprise. Everyone's heard it. Love it, hate it. It is what it is. The DoD is using this software. And one of the challenges that we ran into is that Microsoft, surprise, surprise, is siloed. All their different products are siloed. They don't talk to each other. The same system is not called the same thing in another product. That's Microsoft. That's kind of crazy, right? You got two people working in the same building, but they have different names for the same system. And they categorize it differently. The date timestamps aren't even the same. So we had to come up with something to kind of take all that data and make it make sense. Right? How do I take all this weird, wonky information in different formats, and then from this system, and then bring it all into one place, so that way I can understand it? If I'm a cyber operator, how do I understand this stuff? And that's what CEDAR was. CEDAR is a GOTS product that we developed to look at all these different pieces of technology in the Microsoft suite and have them talk to each other. Right? And then bring that up to something like CMRS, where you can see it from the asset inventory perspective of, okay, what is this system, what's running on it, what software is on it, what's the configuration of it, and how do I use this, and who owns it? So that's really what CEDAR is. And I know we have Mecum up there, and Mecum's kind of starting to go away and be transitioned into Intune. But we replaced Mecum as well with a product that we call Depth. And that's kind of doing the same thing, pulling the information that we would be getting from Mecum into our CMRS instance. So we can use the legacy CMRS today, but one of the problems we have is the vast amount of data. All right, so I don't know how many people are familiar with the DoD network and its actual size, but we cover the entire world. Right, 13 to maybe 14 million systems. That's a big number. Theoretically, supposedly, we're the third largest network in the entire world. That's a big deal, right? Behind China and the United States, right? And we make up part of the United States' network, so theoretically, it might even be bigger. But how do you tackle something at that scale? How do you look at it and create actual risk analysis on that scale, right? So the GFHQ DoD problem today, which I know they're modernizing to a new solution. I think they're the Cyber Defense Command here in the near. I don't know when that name takes effect, but one of their biggest challenges is risk. How do I identify risk across the DoD? Where do I need to focus priorities so that commander has the money, has the people, has the support they need in order to do their mission? And what does it mean if they don't? What happens if that mission isn't funded? What happens if that CPT doesn't make it there in time? What's impacted, right? That's a huge problem set. And we call them wicked problems in the DoD, and that's definitely a wicked problem. Okay, so this is our first crack at modernization, right? So we are moving towards a vendor-based solution called Exonius, right? We picked it up. We're starting to deploy it. We have it in our RMF shop right now. They're using it. It's being used across multiple places in the DoD. And the idea is that this is the Swiss Army knife. This is the codex that allows you to kind of take all the information from all these different tools and make it make sense. They have integrations with over 1,000 different vendors and solutions, and they're able to take all those different solutions together and then put it into a single pane of glass to say, here's your system. And there's a push-pull on this too. So theoretically, if I have a system from Microsoft, not only gives me the bare minimum set of data, but my EMAS solution has everything else I need, I can take that EMAS information and push it back into the Microsoft so they can see the full picture of it. So every solution is getting the full picture of the information that needs to get there. So you're flushing out across the suite of tools. So where you may have a very limited picture of something because you only have visibility on one tool of it, you're able to take other tools that have visibility of it from a roundabout way and then feed out the rest of your tool sets. So if something is feeding both CMRS and Splunk, your Splunk instance now has better data because it's deduplicated, it's authenticated, you know that it's good information, and it's coming from more than one source, and you can validate that. And that's kind of what Exonius does for us, is gives us that Swiss Army knife in our, it's like a Rolodex. We can look up a system, see who owns it, see where it's at, see what it's doing, see what software is on it, what version of firmware is on there, what the mission is for that. By integrating things like EMAS, which we didn't have before, now you can look at the ANA package and say, okay, what is this mission of this system? Where is it integrated into this network? Who owns it? What are they using it for? Which is really important if you're a commander, because if my laptop as a commander gets taken over, that's a problem. But if, E5 over there or E4 over there gets his laptop taken over, maybe not worried as much, right? So you can kind of identify your key terrain better. And then from a DoD and risk perspective, they can look at it and say, okay, I know that this set over here is really important. Let's make sure we provide resources for that or keep an eye on those things as you're going into the next phase of an operation. And then if you're on the offensive side, you can say, well, I want to set the conditions for engagement. Let me see where they are. How did they get in there? Where can I go in so they don't know that I'm watching them? And you can see the network from that perspective, from an offensive side. And this is something new that we haven't really thought about, but this is what this stuff allows us to do. Deeper analytics with more information, faster. Right? And as you get cleaner data and you're able to standardize these things, you're able to take other tools that are out there, the machine learning, the AI stuff that's out there today. You're able to make more sense of the information faster, which means you can make better decisions on risk. You can make better decisions on prioritization. You can say, you know what, I don't need that system, cut it. Or let's keep it running and let's see what the adversary is doing. I think we heard a little bit of that yesterday in Ms. Arrington's speech. Right? I might want to let an adversary sit in my network for a little while because the network they're in is not priority. It's not critical. Okay, let's see what they're going after. Let's watch what they're doing. Let's learn from what we're seeing here. Let's operationalize this. And that's something we haven't really been able to do until today. So that's really important and powerful.
Yeah, so we're going to work this in phases. As you know, DoD does not move fast at anything, and I think Ms. Arrington pointed that out, that we're trying to get to that point where we start deploying things a little bit more quickly. So the first phase, as you saw a couple of slides ago, is we had CEDAR as the collector for all of the MDE points across DoD. As we move forward as Exonius as a foundation, Exonius is going to replace CEDAR as that collector and push data into CMRS as that data aggregator. And that last phase is eventually that Exonius is going to become the new CMRS or CMRS 2.0. So what we're looking to do across DoD is we are going to establish what we're calling a core node to collect that data from the different pieces of the DoD. and then we're going to purchase several licenses to distribute to DoD customers to deploy collector nodes. So those are essentially just VPN tunnels that are going to push information into the collector node and display that as a common operating picture with visualization inside of Axonius or CMRS 2.0.
Does anyone have any questions on this? I built this slide. It's a great slide. I love it. little biased. All right. So that's a good question. Number of core nodes. Right now we're looking at one core node, but potentially we might have to have more depending on the scale and the size of the data. We haven't been able to really proof out how many we're going to need in order to get there. I think we're going to be able to use the infrastructure that we have in the Azure environment to actually kind of scale some of that and allow for better data transfer using DPUs and whatnot. So that way we're able to kind of streamline the information as it comes in. So taking notes from the Marine Corps, taking notes from JSP where they had these deployed in pilots, and the Marine Corps has it deployed in actual operations, and then seeing where they have those pain points has been part of the work that we've done over the last 2 years. We started working with Axonius back in 2020. And we pushed it over to the pilot, over to JSP. They ran it in their network. They loved it. They loved it so much they extended the pilot for another 2 years. We just transitioned the JSP over to the RMF production, right? So they had a lot of lessons learned. They identified a lot of problems with the original software set, things that we've overcome and challenged. Most of it is data related, right? So one of the biggest pieces that we have to get after is how do you standardize the data and streamline it so that way the information that's coming in is only the information you need. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we have right now with the higher headquarters JV DoD is identifying those things that are really critical for them. Having all the information in the world is great. Having the exact information you need to make the right decision at the right time is really, really strategic. And that's really what we're trying to get to. We can pull all the data in the world, right? And this is a problem that every major organization has. Even some of the vendors in here, you've probably identified it within your own internal stuff. You have all the information available to you. But if you don't streamline that information and only pull out those nuggets that are of things that are important to you, you're going to get inundated with it. You're going to spend lots of time and have lots of people looking at it, and they're never going to get anywhere to the point where it's too much. It's a flood. So you got to shrink that down a little bit and provide the actual value for that information. Make sure that the information you're providing is valuable to the people that are consuming it. And that's where you got to make sure you stay in lockstep with your customers. And for us, it's the warfighters, right? What information do they need to do their job, and how do they do it? So the collector nodes are based on the location. So today, the way that CMRS operates is through security accounts. They give us a password, they give us a username, and then we take the information from their direct applications like Trellix or MDE and then put it into our systems. Very similar, but we'd be using VPNs instead. So depending on how many core service accounts they have now, it would be pretty similar to what we would need to deploy. Excuse me. And then what we haven't really touched on too much is the security strategy and the modernization of that strategy. So back in 2020, we created a draft strategy presented to the DoD CIO, and that strategy basically talked about the data-centric approach. How do we shift away from the defense in depth and move into the next realm of network operations, right? Which is zero trust. How do you implement zero trust across the network? What are the things that you need to shift into, like where you're no longer trusting anything that's on your network? And you can't. You always have to assume breach, especially in an environment that's as large as the DoD's. You have to assume that there are holes that you're not aware of. I can't even tell you how many times on the front line I've seen a J6 go in and stand up a network on the fly in the course of 25 minutes while under fire, right? Like, that's impressive. But at the same time, it means that there's probably things missed. There's probably vulnerabilities out there. I could only imagine how much information our adversaries, our near-peer adversaries, were able to glean from us during the OEF. I couldn't even imagine. I'm sure it was a wealth of knowledge. And what we're trying to avoid here is things like, is anyone familiar with the Beast of Kandahar? Does anyone know what that is? It's a UAV system. Looks like a stealth bomber. Has anyone seen pictures of it? Yeah, I know Vince has. Anyone else? All right. So back, it was all over the news. One of these things it supposedly crashed, right? Crashed in Iran. It didn't crash, right? It landed in Iran, and no one knows why, right? And that's because there's a critical vulnerability at the time that we didn't know about. We didn't know that you could take over a system by just flooding it with RF and disconnecting it from the base station. This was all over the news, right? It was a huge deal because it was a black eye for the Air Force at the time. But that's something that we want to avoid. where are my critical systems? What are their vulnerabilities? How do I protect that vulnerability? And what are the assets that are locked around that vulnerability? Like, what network was that base station sitting in? How did that base station, well, how was the power getting to that base station? What are the critical infrastructure pieces that support that mission? And what happens if that actual system gets taken down? Like, what are the impacts? What mission impacts does it have? What ISR impacts are there? Right? So these are some of the things we want to think about. And as you're moving through these kind of these battle rhythm movements, exercises on your different critical infrastructure pieces, then there's a cyber component to it and says these are non-kinetic effects. Right? How do I ensure that the non-kinetic effects are not affecting the actual warfighter in a kinetic way? Right? And that's where this comes into play. That's where you get to your lethality. That's where you get to your cyber readiness. That's where you get to your modernization, and why it's so important to modernize. And the only way to modernize is to campaign. Right? And that's where we're starting here. So you've heard us talk about phases, and we're in phase 1 right now. We're shifting into phase 2, hopefully here in the near future. And then we'll be hitting phase 3. These are campaigning efforts. Right? And it doesn't stop, though. It keeps going. We're going to continue campaigning. We're going to continue moving forward and trying to move that ball forward into modernization for as long as we can. And then shift to the next technology that allows us to do it better.
Right. So I see some of you guys taking pictures of the slide. You can't hold us to this. But we have some, obviously, some rough dates. So first step is we are establishing an instance of Axonius in one of the DISA ecosystems. The current CEDAR instance that's collecting all the data from MDE, we're going to push that data to be co-located with the Axonius instance that's going to sit in one of the data centers within DISA. So we're focused on trying to get that done by October 2025. As we go through the ANA and implementation and testing, we're looking to deploy the first phase of CMRS 2.0 January 2026. And then we will start working with the DoD folks to put an order together, ordering or alerting DoD components to be prepared to deploy your collector nodes and push that data into our that core node that we're going to establish.
Yep. So it's really important that we learn from the lessons that we garnered from JSP, and we also garnered from the Marine Corps and some others that have implemented. And we're starting to look at the RMF folks as well and some of the lessons they've learned and how they're tailoring the information, how long it takes them to integrate these things, right? So resource question on the collector nodes, really good question, right? That's something that we're looking at. The core node is another thing we're looking at. And then whether or not it makes sense to deploy in a cloud. The cloud's great. It allows for a lot of flexibility. It gives you the flexibility to move left and right pretty quickly. But is it the right environment? Is it the right speed? Is it the right technology for us to leverage for this? Do we want to keep the data on-prem? And what does that look like? Are we going to get hit with a lot of cost because of data transfer for the Microsoft products, right? So anything Windows, there's always a data cost, right? There's always that. Is it worth doing for that amount of data? And can we streamline it down so there's no longer a cost? So the cost is a factor for everything, especially when it comes to IT and the way we move forward. Right? So how do we avoid some of those? Does it make sense to do on-prem? Does it make sense to do cloud? Does it make sense to do a hybrid? Can we do that? Is it possible? And so these are some of the things that we're kind of war game and go through at the same time as we're learning on the fly. So.
Okay, I think that's it for us. Does anybody have any questions?
Is it for us?
Yeah.
I mean, we've only gone.
I want to just tag something they said for the whole audience here. Is I think first of all, for folks that are in the endpoint space, we don't need another silo. These guys were right on that. The other is what they're talking about in terms of collapsing those silos and bringing the data together is what General Stanton says constantly is the defensive cyber operators of the future operating on a network that is focused on zero trust need all of that data fused together to make decisions. And so what they're talking about doing with the CMRS modernization and bringing that together with things that we already have at the perimeter and other elements of the infrastructure is absolutely essential to get there. So we could use your help in industry to not have another silo and to help us figure out better ways to create analytics and give the DCO operators of the future what they need. Thanks.
Yeah, for those that are wondering who that gentleman is, that's Dr. Brian Herman. He is my SES. He's my boss.
The boss.
Yeah. Please tell him we did a good job today. Yeah, everyone's starting to clap. Yeah. Going back to the mail. Yeah, checks in the mail. All right, so I'm gonna leave a closing remark, right? So As we discussed today, the modernization of CMRS and our endpoint security strategy isn't just about improving cybersecurity. It's about ensuring DIS's ability to meet the core principles in a rapidly evolving threat landscape. Now, I wrote all this stuff down prior. I'm not good at memorizing. At the heart of our mission is lethality, ensuring that our cyber defense capabilities stay ahead of the adversaries through proactive risk mitigation and AI-enhanced decision-making, right? So it's not always going to be enhanced through AI, but it's going to be informed. We want to make informed decisions faster than our adversary can make, right? By modernizing CMRS and the endpoint security, we're reinforcing our ability to detect, defend, and neutralize emerging threats before they can impact operations. And I think that's where the key is. We want to get to this before it hits the operator. We want to get to it before there's an impact by the warfighter. The warfighter should never know that this war is being fought behind their backs. When you pick up an M4 and you're going toward the front line, you should never have to worry about your comms. Right? Ms. Arrington talked about this yesterday with her first husband in the Humvee. He wasn't able to get the comm out and say, hey, stop, halt the convoy. And because of that, they hit an IED. Right? That should never happen in today's world. Right? It's going to, absolutely going to. But we want to reduce that as much as possible. And how we do that is through modernization. It's through rigorous test and control. It's through looking at these things and holding accountable those folks and admins that need to be held accountable to do their jobs. Right? Lethality is meaningless, though, without readiness. Right? Cyber resilience is mission readiness, and the enhancements we've introduced ensure that the warfighter has secure, seamless, and adaptive cybersecurity capabilities that operate at scale. And scale is important. With Exonius integrations, AI-enhanced automation, and continuous risk assessment, we're reducing blind spots that could compromise the DD's ability to respond efficiently and effectively to threats in real time. And that's the other thing that we want to get after is real time. CMRS today is not a real time product, right? The information takes a while to get in, it takes a while to populate, and that's been one of the hurdles that we struggled with is that the operators and the commanders and defenders, they want that now. They want the answer today. They want it now. They don't want it in 4 days. They want the information that's relevant to them today to make this informed decisions on the fly as they need to. And that's that's the other reason why we need to modernize. Getting to something like Exonius that allows us to do more near real-time threat analysis and risk mitigation is really important. None of this happens without modernization, right? The integration of AI/ML technology, standardizing data visibility, and streamlining endpoint security operations. We're shaping the cybersecurity landscape for the next generation. And this is where I talked about the CMRS is your road atlas today. I want to get to Siri. I want to get to Alexa. How do I get to here and how long? What's the traffic look like? Right? I want to be able to shape that environment through this. And that's where we're trying to get to. How do I give that commander a live interactive experience that they can say, okay, CMRS 2.0, tell me where my vulnerabilities are, in voice, in natural language, and have that system come back and say, oh, sir, here's your vulnerabilities. We think you should do this, this, and this to strengthen these perimeter or these systems. And here's where we think you have a really critical CVE that needs to be patched. Right? We want to try to streamline that operation. And that's where we're trying to get to with more data, the right data at the right time to the right people. These advancements aren't just about keeping up, they're about staying ahead, driving efficiency and ensuring long-term operational sustainability. I swear I'm almost done. And lastly, the campaigning. Right? A coordinated effort to continuously strengthen our cybersecurity posture. This modernization effort is not a one-time initiative. Right? It's an ongoing commitment to adaptability, collaboration, and innovation by working alongside industry leaders. That's you guys, the DIB partners out there today. Thank you very much for being here. By working with you and research institutions and industrial leaders and allied forces. I didn't see any allied forces, but if you're here, thank you very much. We ensure that DISA remains at the forefront of cybersecurity strategy, reinforcing our ability to secure, operate, and defend across all domains. As we move forward, our focus is clear. Modernizing DISA's cybersecurity landscape is about enhancing defensive capabilities, ensuring operational readiness, advancing future-forward strategies, and driving sustained collaboration. Our mission does not stop here. It evolves, and together we lead that evolution. So thank you very much for your time today, ladies and gentlemen. I know we are still 10-ish minutes. I have 6 minutes? 15 minutes. All right, so I'm going to sit up here for 15 minutes, so that way everyone who scanned in is going to get their CEU credit. You're welcome. I have coffee. I'll be okay. But if anyone has questions, I want to turn the closing statements over to JC if he has any closing remarks, and then we'll start taking question and answer.
No, he stole all my thunder. I don't have anything written on my phone that I can read, so I appreciate everybody for coming out. I know that guy had a question, and then Brian scared him off, so you guys are welcome to come back up or wait for us after the meeting. But yeah, appreciate you guys for attending.
I'll sit right here for another 15 minutes, so that way everyone gets their CEUs, I promise.
So is the SEDR creating a risk score for those endpoints?
Is the
No, it's just collecting the data.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Cedar.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a data collection point for all the MDE.
Is anything creating a risk score that other people consume?
Yeah, so the Exonius platform will have the ability to do risk analysis and create a score in there. Theoretically, though, right now what's happening is the risk scoring is being done by JVH Udon.
And how do you expel Exonius?
AXONIUS.
Thank you.
Any questions? That was an easy one.
Don't encourage them.
All right.
All right.
Again, I appreciate your time.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Good job.